Last week, during the live stream, I told you that falling behind and stopping aren't the same thing. This time around, I want to tell you about the sentence that has the potential to steal your August if you're watching this live, or anytime really in August. So you probably already said it, maybe this morning, maybe in the shower, maybe over a cup of coffee, maybe while looking at a project you've been circling for weeks. That's what you said. I'll get serious in September. Now, that sounds responsible. It sounds like planning. It sounds like the adult thing to say during the first week of August. But it's none of those things. It's a rule about when you're allowed to begin. And here's the part I think that should bother you. You never wrote that rule. You never signed it. Nobody ever asked if you agreed to it. You've just been keeping it. The same can be said for January 1st as well. So today what we're going to do is we're going to pull that rule into the light and kind of look at it properly, where it came from, what it costs, and what changes the moment you realize the only signature a starting line never really needed was yours. So let's get into it. For those of you new to the channel, I'm Mike Vardy, and pretty much every Wednesday we do a live stream right here, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern. And this is the second week back after a couple of weeks away. So, I'm trying to reestablish a cadence, and it's holding. And if you were here last week, you know that that's kind of the point. If you weren't here last week, you can go back and watch the replay. Now, if you're catching the replay of this live stream, welcome. This live stream will hold up in, like I said, January. It'll hold up in October, because the rule we're talking about doesn't just live in August. It just gets really loud here, I find. So here's kind of where we're going to go for the next half hour or so. If you have any comments or things, I want to see you throw them in the chat as well. So first, where did the September rule actually come from? Because it does have a history, and once you see it, you really can't unsee it. And then second, what keeping that rule costs, not in terms of guilt, but in plain countable terms. And then the third is the difference between two things that look identical from the outside, like deciding to start and then feeling licensed to start. Now that gap is where whole months can disappear. And at the end, one move you can make today, and a word about next Wednesday, because this stream is actually the front door to something bigger this month, our Lyceum. So let's get into it. So first off, where this rule comes from that we're talking about. Like, nobody is born believing that September is a starting line. You've kind of been trained into it. If you're like me, you went to school at the start of September. There's a lot of people that do start school in September, so that kind of fits this vibe here. Now think about the fresh starts that you've actually been handed in your life, like January 1st. As I just mentioned, the first day of school, the new semester, the new fiscal quarter, the Monday. Every one of these has something in common. Somebody else drew the line. Like the calendar drew it. The school board drew it. The company drew it. And then everyone lined up together, and there was something genuinely good about that. Shared starting lines. They carry like a real energy. Anyone who stood at the start of a race knows the difference between running with a crowd and running alone. But here's what those years of issued starting lines have quietly taught you. That starting is something you're given. that beginnings arrive on a schedule from outside with someone else's authority behind them. That a start that you draw yourself, mid-month, mid-season, mid-anything, is somehow less real, less official, less likely to count. Now, 12, 16, 20 years, whatever, of school wires this in really deep. September isn't a month, it's the month. New shoes, sharpened pencils, a version of you that hasn't made any mistakes yet. And that version of you is very, very, very easy to wait for. Now, I'll tell you when I first noticed this myself. So years ago, long before TimeCrafting had a name, I caught myself in early August with a project that I genuinely cared about, and it was sitting untouched. And when I asked myself why, the answer that came back was so automatic that I almost didn't hear it. It does make sense to start things now. Like, things reset in September anyway. Kids go back to school, all that stuff. So things reset in September. Now, I wasn't in school. I didn't have a semester. Nothing in my actual life reset in September. But the rule did not care. The rule had been installed decades earlier, and it was still running, still checking my starts against a school calendar that I hadn't been enrolled in for years. And that's the thing about inherited rules. They don't expire when the situation that created them ends. They just go quiet. And they keep deciding things. So, let's name the rule precisely, because vague rules, they really can't be examined. So the rule says legitimate starts are issued by the calendar. Everything else is just puttering until the real thing begins. Now, did you agree to that? Did anyone ever ask? No. It's inherited. It came in the box with everything else school gave you. Some of it useful, some of it not, none of it chosen. And an inherited rule you've never examined isn't really a rule. It's a habit wearing a rule's clothing. Okay, so it's an inherited rule. So what? Plenty of inherited rules are fine. Like, look both ways before crossing the street. Inherited. Excellent rule. Keep it. Keep it. But the question is never whether a rule is inherited. The question is what it costs to keep. So let's count. If we're looking at the September rule, that costs you 5 weeks minimum every year. Because here's what I'll get serious in September actually does to August. It converts a month of your life into a kind of waiting room. Too late to salvage summer, too early to begin fall. So present, but not participating. and waiting rooms have a very particular quality. You don't do your best thinking in them. You don't really start anything in them. You sit, you scroll, you check the clock. Now, do you want to see what this actually looks like? Well, walk it forward with me. So today is August 5th. You told yourself September is the real start. So this week, the project stays closed. Next week, you're not going to open it either. I mean, why would you? The rule is still in effect. And the week after that, maybe it's a vacation. And the week after that, it's late August, which is basically September's waiting room's waiting room, right? So then there's Labor Day, and Labor Day actually arrives a little bit later this year. So then the first real week, which is chaos because everybody else also deferred it. Every meeting, every launch, every commitment in your orbit lands in the same 7 days. So realistically, it's mid-September. That's when the September start actually starts. So count it. From today, that's 6 weeks. 6 weeks of a thing you care about, sitting closed because of a signature nobody signed. Now multiply by every year you've run this pattern. What you've got is not a scheduling quirk. That's a measurable piece of your life. But the 5 weeks are the visible cost, and the hidden cost, well, that's worse. Every time you defer a start to a calendar date, you rehearse the belief underneath, the belief that you needed external permission to begin. You practice it, and then you get better at it. And a person who's practiced deferring to September will defer to January and to the Monday after the trip and to the one thing settle down, which you may have noticed they never really do. So the September rule isn't one rule. It's a training program. And every August you keep it, you graduate again. One more cost, and this one, it's subtle. So when you finally do reach September, the sacred starting line, the one you've waited all of August for, you arrive carrying 5 weeks of accumulated pressure. Everything you deferred is now new. The start has to be perfect because of look how long you waited for it, right? We talked about this in the last live stream. The bigger and cleaner you need the start to be, the more fragile it is. The full restore fails. It failed you in January and it'll fail you in September. So the waiting doesn't just cost the wait, it sabotages the thing you were waiting for. And my stomach's deciding it's time for me to eat. Now, here's the distinction this whole stream turns on. I want you to kind of lean in with me for this part. So there's a difference between deciding to start something and feeling licensed to start it. So from the outside, they look identical. Both end with you beginning, but they run on completely different fuel. Feeling licensed is external. It's that calendar signature, right? It's the crowd at the starting line. It's the sense that conditions have officially declared this is a legitimate moment to begin. It's real energy. I'm not pretending it isn't, but it's borrowed energy. It arrives on someone else's schedule and it leaves the same way. Now, deciding, that's internal. It's quieter. Nothing about the day announces it. No one else is lining up next to you. It's just the choice made, not received. And here's what I've come to believe, watching myself and watching a lot of other people over a lot of years. Almost everything durable in a life starts with a decision, not a license. Think about the things you've actually sustained, the practice you've kept, the relationship you've tended, the craft you've built. Did any of them begin because a calendar said the moment was official? Or did they begin on some unremarkable Tuesday with a quiet choice that nobody witnessed? The people who try to power through on calendar energy, who basically wait for that big sanctioned start and then attempt to force momentum out of it, they burn exactly the way January burns. Bright, brief, and done by the third week. Because the license was doing the work, and licenses expire. The quiet choice doesn't expire. It doesn't roar. Sometimes it's nothing more than sitting back down, picking up the pen, making the call. Sometimes it's nothing more than deciding that a random Wednesday in early August, this one, let's say, counts. That's the whole difference. Not willpower, not discipline, not a better morning routine, just the recognition that the signature you've been waiting for was always going to have to be yours. As I talk about that random Tuesday, I couldn't help but think about the line from Street Fighter, the movie. Go look it up. The old movie. Now, let's move on. Before anybody hears this as September doesn't matter, let me draw one more line because this part matters to me personally, and you'll see why in a moment. There's nothing wrong with September mattering. There's nothing wrong with January mattering. There's nothing wrong with November mattering. So, let's go back to September, though. Some of you are ahead of me here because for you, September is not inherited at all. It's structural. Your kids go back to school. The house empties for 6 hours a day for the first time since May or June. Client work that hibernated all summer, all of a sudden it wakes up, and the season genuinely changes what's actually possible. And if that's you, you're right. And you're exactly who needs the distinction I'm about to make, because this is where nuance earns its keep. There's a difference between a constraint and a permission slip. A constraint is real. I can't do deep work until the kids are in school. That might be a plain fact of your August. Fine, respect that. But watch what the rule does with that fact. It takes one real constraint, like 6 hours of quiet arriving in September, and quietly expands it to cover everything. Suddenly, it's not just the deep work waiting for September. It's the walking, the reading, the email you could send from your phone in 4 minutes, things the constraint never actually touched, all filed under September because the rule loves company. So here's the honest test. Does this specific thing actually require what September provides? Some things will. Most won't. The constraint gets September. The rest of it gets now. There's nothing wrong with a season having weight, with an arrival being planned, with something landing on a particular date because that date was chosen with care. I'm an author. I know this when it comes to book launches, for example, and so on and so forth. But the difference is between waiting for September and building toward it. Waiting is passive. The month between here and there is dead air, and you're a passenger. But building, that's active. The month between here and there is the work. Every week has a job that the arrival depends on. Same destination, completely different August. And I'm going to live that this month as I get ready for my new book to come out in September. Now, I'll be honest with you, I do have a September. There's something landing that month, as I just alluded to, that I've been building toward for a long time. And some of you know more about this, and there'll be more to say on this soon. But what I can tell you is that that is exactly what this August is for. Every week of it. The stream is part of it. The rule we examined today is part of it. And that's the difference. I'm not waiting for my September. I'm laying the road to it. And that's available to you too. If something in your life genuinely belongs to September, fine, beautiful. Then August's job is to build that road. But if you're honest and there's no road being built, if August is just the room that you're sitting in until the doors open, then the rule has you. And it's time to stop keeping it. So here's the one move for today. And it's small on purpose. Pick the thing you've been deferring to September. You know the one. It came to mind like 3 sentences ago. Now find its smallest real beginning. Break the project down to its smallest particles. Again, not the whole thing, not the perfect version. The first brick, the email, the document with a title and one ugly paragraph. The pair of shoes by the door. And I mean smaller than feels respectable. Again, breaking a project down to its smallest particles. If the September version of the plan was overhaul how I eat, today's version is one grocery item. If it was finally write the book, today's version is a file with a name. And if it was get the business system sorted, today's version is opening the one document you've been avoiding and reading it. Just reading it. The size isn't the point. The signature is. Every one of those tiny acts, those small particles, is you signing your own starting line. And that signature is the thing 20 years of September's trained out of you. And do it today. Because, not because today is special, but because it isn't. That's the point. Starting on an unremarkable day is how you break the rule. You can't out-argue 20 years of Septembers, but you can out-act them, one ordinary Wednesday at a time. This is stuff I still need to keep in mind too. I share this with you, not only because I know it's valuable to you, but it's valuable to me. Now, let me tell you where this goes next. Today was actually a doorway. So what we did today was look at one rule during this live stream, the September rule. We held it up, we checked the signature, and then we found it blank. But it's not the only rule that you're keeping. Everybody runs on a set of them. Rules about when you're allowed to rest, what counts as real work, who you're allowed to disappoint, what has to be finished before you can begin. Some of those rules are load-bearing. Some are just old. And most of us have never once sorted one pile from the other. That's next Wednesday. The Lantern Lyceum. It's a different kind of session. I do it monthly, once. And it's called The Rules You Keep. It's going to be the same day, just a different door. So we've shared that. I'd love for you to click on the notification bell to get notified. That way you don't miss it. And until then, thank you so much for being here. You don't need September's permission. Remember that. You don't need any month's permission. What you need to do is stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.